Hi, I'm Valeria Popov, and welcome to the Supercharged Plant-Based Lifestyle Show. And today I have an honor to interview Christin Bummer. Welcome, Christin.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm so excited. It's going to be really fun to talk with you today.
Awesome. So would you please introduce yourself and what you do for people who still might not know you?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Christin Bummer, and I'm the creator of the Forever Diet. I've been following a plant-based lifestyle program since 2011, and I've created online video training programs that help people walk through the steps. We talk a lot about the why, but we really focus on how to. So that's been sort of the really fun part of what I do is demystifying all the sometimes confusing information about plant-based stuff that's out there.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And what got you into the plant-based eating world?
Yeah. So I actually started back then in 2011. I'd always been what I considered pretty healthy. I didn't have any, crazy problems going on or anything. I was never obese or real overweight. And yet my blood pressure was climbing. And I was athletic. I was exercising a lot. Thought I was doing all the right things. I was eating all the lean meats, lean protein, high protein, low carb, that whole thing. And still I had high blood pressure and I was about to go on medication for it. And that for me was a really big turning point when I realized something's not adding up. And I didn't know what it was, but I was determined to figure it out. And of course, it didn't take long, sort of going down that path before I discovered plant-based and all the miraculous things that can happen when just changing your food. I always knew food was important and that, deep fried Twinkies were probably not the best idea, but still I had no idea really the great control that we have over our health and our outcomes when we're eating the right food. So that's what really attracted me. And then weight loss actually for me was a side effect. So weight loss, feeling better. I used to have headaches all the time and they just poof, went away. I used to have prescription migraine medication that ended up expiring. I never needed to use it anymore once I made these changes. And everything came into line for me so quickly that I was completely sold. And that's what I needed to see. And I think that's what a lot of people need to see is that personal experience. And for me, it happened so quickly and so dramatically, even though I didn't have crazy things going on, even the little stuff I had going on corrected itself so easily. I was completely hooked and there's no going back.
That's an awesome story. And, I was always, because for me, how I went plant-based is I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes and my insulin level kept growing and growing. And at that point, I was exposed to a little bit of information about plant-based. So I decided to give it a try. And I was brave enough being pregnant and trying it. And it worked.
Right.
Like in 2 weeks, I was off insulin. Like imagine that. But
Wow.
for me, like if that would not happen, I don't know how would I be able to go in and try plant-based, because as I said, like for you, you had a higher blood pressure. How did you discover that? Were you doing like once a year, once a 6 months kind of a blood test? Were you like doing it? Because what I know,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't do it. They don't go to the doctor if they feel good. And
Yep.
they might not even know that they have a high blood pressure or a higher sugar
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's a really great question. I would go to, I mean, I come from a little bit of a medical background. My mom's a nurse. There's a lot of nurses in the family. My husband's a physician, and I would go to the drugstore electronic cuff that they would have, and I would just check it once in a while, and I knew what it was supposed to be, and it would go up a little bit. But then I would also, it's sort of an interesting thing at that phase, I didn't have a regular PCP that I saw regularly because I just treated it as if I'm sick, I'll go to urgent care. And that's usually what would happen. I'd get strep throat or something, or get an injury, and that's when I would go to the doctor. And so because that was just sort of pop-in visits, nobody was watching or noticing a trend, but I knew enough on my own, just from my own interest, that my blood pressure was climbing every, maybe every 6 months or so that I would go, to have some kind of random, doctor visit like that. So it was sort of interesting. I was on the lookout for myself to begin with. That's what put it on the radar that something's really not adding up. And so then when somebody mentioned, actually the first connection for me was from the China study. So when they mentioned the link between dairy and cancer, all my, all the flags and sirens went off saying, what are you talking about? I had no idea. And there was sort of an interesting twist that I was a graduate of Cornell University, and T. Colin Campbell was doing this research at Cornell while I was there. The book was published while I was there. And yet even still, I never heard of it until 10 years later. And so that to me was also a big wake-up call when I realized this information's out there. People have known it for decades. The stuff that's in the China study is not new research. It's old research that's, been continuing. And yet still, even I was on the lookout at Cornell, I had no idea. And that also set off some flags, like what else is out there? And that, kind of sent me down the path. And when I learned about prevent and reverse heart disease, and that answered all my questions about heart disease and blood pressure. And, I was really off and running with that combination.
Yeah, you got lucky that you cut it and then you found plant-based.
Yeah.
I wish that to all of our viewers and future viewers to actually take an action. Don't be a person who's just doing nothing or, just floating, because this is this is very serious thing. So have you found a lot of friends and family transitioning or following you when you transition to plant-based?
Yes. So my husband and I went through this transition together, and our transition actually happened overnight. So we went straight from standard American diet to not even straight to vegan, but to whole food plant-based. And then it was probably another week after that before we added the no oil too and realized, what that means. And so that was a big switch for our family. It wasn't a transition, it was just a change. And so that we had several people who actually were supportive and embraced it at first and kept us at an arm's distance, right? So they were supportive, but not really into it for themselves. And then just over time, we had more and more people ask questions, and more people were trying it out. And we were very inclusive and just encouraged people to just do what you can and just try it and see for yourself. And it was sort of fun too. It's still a strategy actually that I teach my students, to just tell people you're trying it, right? Like don't decide that, or don't try to presume that this is a permanent change you've made forever and there's no going back, because a lot of people will question that and have some judgments about that. But if you just present it as, I'm just trying this thing, I don't know if it'll work or not, people will tend to embrace that more. And we did that naturally because that's exactly how we approached it. In the beginning, it was just and I remember, my husband's words, he would always say, if even 10% of what's in the China study is true, just 10%, we would be insane to not try it. And so, of course, we tried it, and then experiencing our own personal results, like, okay, the proof is right there. I don't need anything more. And so we shared that attitude, I think, with a lot of friends and family, and it wasn't right away, but now we have a lot of friends and family that come on board. And it's funny, a lot of them actually will do it on their own. And then I'll find out months later that somebody's been vegan for 6 months and I didn't even know it, right? But they've heard about it from us. They've also heard about it from other people. And, it's so much more mainstream-ish, than it was 10 years ago. So it's really nice to see that happening for sure.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that for you and your husband, it was overnight. What pushed you toward, across that kind of bump?
So Yeah, so I think a lot of people do so a lot of people that are vegetarian, right? And so when we first went vegan, especially, in 2011, a lot of people were vegetarian for ethical reasons, right? And it's funny, for me, it kind of came in reverse, right? So I came on board for health reasons, and then later, learned so much about the ethical reasons as well. And so, but because the first thing that I was really exposed to was the China study that was all about dairy and cancer, and then extrapolated not just dairy, but all animal protein, then it was just an obvious decision. Okay, we get rid of all the meat and the dairy. It's one package, it's all gone. And still to this day, when I talk to people that aren't really ready to make that transition, I always recommend dropping dairy first, because it just has, so many implications. And so that was why we jumped right to veganism. And then it was just this, wonderful sequence of events. We were actually on vacation in Alaska when I was reading the China study. I brought it to read on vacation. And throughout the course of the week we were there, we were learning all this information. And before we even got home, we said, that's it. We've just got to do this. And while we were there, we actually met another couple as we were hiking down a glacier, and they happened to also be from Pittsburgh. So we struck up conversation, and it turns out that they were recently vegan. So we got to talking. It was so strange. We hadn't talked to anybody else the entire day. And we ran into this couple that's from Pittsburgh, and they're just recently vegan. So they actually told me about Prevent Reverse Heart Disease and about Forks Over Knives, this great documentary that was about to be coming out. And I wrote down Forks Over Knives, in my guidebook, which is just so cool. And it turns out that there's more than just being vegan, right? So in 1 week, I'm learning about being vegan. And then the next week, I'm understanding now what it really means, this whole food, plant-based thing, and why no oil and other processed foods. So I think we're very lucky. It was a lot to take in, right? This was literally in a week's time. I learned, went from 0 to 100%. And we kind of just decided, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right, because I wanted to test it. And I think that's really what the motivation was. So we went to the doctor, we got before results and lab work and blood pressure and everything. And we were just going to do all of it for 30 days just to see what happened. And I think we got to day, I don't know, it's like 16 or 20. And we're like, yeah, okay, we're done. Like, we're in, we don't have to test it any longer. We're just in. But of course, over the years, we kept learning and growing and modifying and adapting and just evolving, so it's been really neat to do what has become a long-term transition. Started out very dramatically for us, but it was just the sequence of events and sort of coincidences at that time. And it just made the most sense. And that's what worked.
Yes, yeah, it's very exciting. I remember when how I started it too. It was kind of like you described, like the cards were stacking, so it's like you collect the evidence. And then the most exciting part for me was too when I started to see results, when my blood sugar were like going down, when I got insulin and all other stuff that happened, like weight loss and allergies went away, like all of the stuff. And that was like and I kind of missed that time because it was very experimental. You were like, oh my God, I'm going to try something new. And it's so exciting. And you get all these results, amazing. And like from another, like the other side of the coin is like, it's so sad. It's so sad that people get excited about such a natural thing, being healthy.
Yeah.
People are robbed of like
Yes.
healthy by all this in like the food industry, drug industry, like all of that stuff. This is so like being very excited, and then you look back and like, this is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone should be experiencing that in their lifetime from birth, being happy, healthy, eating right, so it's kind of like two sides of a coin for me, like the excitement and the rush and like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I found something that really works and it's amazing. And then it's like the sadness, like, why wouldn't they know it? Why would they know it when I was like, you know, in kindergarten or in school or
Yeah,
anywhere, you know?
exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I had
So,
a lot of, I don't know if anger is the right word, but I felt very, well, very misled, right? And like my whole life, how do I not know this stuff? And, you know, and I'm well educated. I have a family that cares about health, right? Like they tried to teach healthy habits. And, um, you know, I just, so if I'm missing this, everybody is, and I don't understand why. And so yeah, there's a lot of questions in the beginning. And I think, you know, speaking of being robbed, I even know how sick I was, right? So I would come home from work. I had an active job. I was working at a dog daycare and dog training at the time. And I was on my feet all the time. So it's an active job, but I would come home and just crash on the couch. And then I'd have headaches and I would blame it on the barking dogs, right? Or I would roll I was into sports and I'd roll my ankle, you know, not frequently, but it would happen. I take a lot of ibuprofen. So I ended up, um, and I was drinking, right? I was in my, you know, late 20s. And so I was drinking wine and alcohol and hard liquor. And I ended up having bleeding ulcers in my stomach and headaches all the time from all the ibuprofen, you know, then taking ibuprofen was causing problems with my stomach. And I would go for a car ride with my husband and he would laugh at me because as soon as the car left the driveway, my head's against the window and I'm passed out, right? And that was normal for me. And I didn't think that it was that strange. And then a month later, and you mentioned allergies, I used to have horrible seasonal allergies and I don't anymore. I used to have asthma. I don't anymore. And there's all these things that I just thought were normal, and I didn't know any better. And that is sad, right? I had no idea, not only that it wasn't healthy, it wasn't normal, but I didn't even know that I had some control over it. So that the whole thing, when I realized, oh my goodness,
yeah.
I did all that to myself from my food and the alcohol, you know, like just, it was pretty crazy. It is crazy. And that's how most people, you know, that to most people to this day, that's, you know, we just don't know any better yet.
Yeah. It's like a normal, you know,
Yeah.
normal things to do, you know? So you focused your energy on other people now, but like all the things that you could do, you choose coaching. Why is that?
You know, I think you actually really defined it well when you talked about that time period when it was new for you and you're learning all these things and it's this new experiment. And I get to relive that over and over again through other people now. And so I get to experience that. I get to deliver information that helps. I feel like I unlock things that people are misunderstanding or they're just not quite sure how to implement. And so I just find a lot of joy in helping people figure this out and actually implement it. And I think what really led me to coaching, it sort of happened by accident, to be honest. When I first learned all this stuff, and I felt that I had been kept in the dark unnecessarily. I felt like it was my responsibility to share and to tell other people, because if I didn't know, then I'm sure they don't know, right? And so I started writing, and I actually started writing a blog because at that point, I was afraid that if I put all this stuff on my Facebook page, my friends are going to just beeline out of here, right? They don't want to hear it. And I thought they would, but then, you know, I got some early feedback that told me otherwise. And a lot of people just aren't ready to change and they just don't really want to hear it. And so I started writing, and then people would ask me questions and people would come to me, and it started to become kind of clear to me that it was somehow easier for me than for other people. And so then I felt like, okay, I just need to keep sharing. I'm just going to keep answering questions. And as we go on vacation, that's one of the questions I hear all the time. Like, I'm okay at home, but if I go on vacation, I'm going to blow it. And I've been on vacations in the past where I went on a week cruise once and came back 10 pounds heavier. And now I go on vacation and I probably lose weight because I'm getting out more. I'm not working. I'm not at my desk as much. And so, you know, I'm more active. And so it's just become, it came around very organically, as just people would ask me questions and I would help them. And then it was almost 2 years ago now that I took all this stuff that was in here that I'd been helping people with and formulated it into a step-by-step, okay, here's how you do it. Let me take you from zero, whether your zero is never heard of plant-based, or you've been plant-based or tried to for years and you're just not quite, seeing all the results. And then here's how we go through it. And I just have grown a ton, and I keep learning and doing all sorts of training. And I love coaching and helping other people. So
yeah. Awesome. So you being a coach, what is the strongest asset of you being a coach, and why, what is that people, like specific people, attract to you? What is your secret ingredient?
I think, people say it's my approach all the time. And I think that means two things. I think to some degree, I am empathic. And so I understand. Yes, I eat this way now, but I didn't always eat this way. And yes, there were days I grew up eating hot dogs and mac and cheese, right? And so, and I've never forgotten that. And I hope that I never do. So when I first started this, I had a ton of questions. I asked that annoying question, well, where am I going to get all my protein, right? Of course I did. Everybody does, So I have a lot of patience for everybody in every step of the journey, because it was my journey too. And so, and I think that comes through a lot, and people understand that, and they then feel very open, and they're okay being vulnerable. They're okay being honest with me. They know I'm not going to, yell and scream at them and, drop the hammer because they messed up, right? And anytime even somebody tells me they messed up, I'm like, come on, there's no such thing as messing up. Let me tell you why, and we go through that whole thing. So I think that's really the biggest piece of it, is that I will always understand where they're coming from. And then I meet people where they are, and I think that attracts a lot of people, because that's not always the case. It's not always a welcoming thing. And specifically with veganism, there's this sort of false perception that there's the perfect vegan. And if I can't be a perfect vegan, then I'm not going to be welcome in the club. And I find that so silly and so unnecessary. And I maybe overcorrect to some degree to make sure that, people feel completely welcome and comfortable, and just to make whatever changes they can possibly make for the better.
Yes, I hear a lot of empathy. That's what people need for sure. And there is no such a thing as perfect. I feel like perfect is just such not a silly, but a harsh word. Like, nobody can be perfect. Come on. Like, maybe like Dr. Goldhammer can be, or Chef AJ. But even then, like, come on, like we're all human. So,
and they have their flaws in other ways too, right? Like, we're all just people that, are just kind of going through life doing the best that we can in whatever ways that we can. And that's okay. That's good. And thank goodness we're all different,
Yes, I always believe that everyone doing their best, even when they're like, if we see it, it's like not our best. For them, it is their best. So in any situation.
That's right.
So let's go into something that I wanted to really, really know about, because you recently wrote a book, and I'm very excited. So please tell us about your book.
Yes, thank you. So it's called Baby Got Back in Her Pants. And it's so funny. I got the title. It just came to me after a brainstorming session. I have an online program of the same name. And, at some point I realized, I talk about fun all the time, and I preach this lifestyle has to be fun, or it's not going to stick. Right? So we always going to find the joy first. And I just, as soon as I said that, I've got the Baby Got Back song in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, this is fun. And so this is it. So so the book is a step-by-step summary, condensed version of what I teach my coaching clients. And so we start with, well, first of all, it's not a book to just flip through cover to cover while your feet are up on the couch. It's intended to get you off the couch and into motion. And so and I don't just mean exercise, I mean taking action. And so it's a workbook style book, but I've also created a companion workbook that comes along free with it, that's downloadable. And everything that I do is intended to make things just as easy as possible. And so I start right at the very beginning with talking about your why and figuring out what it is. And a lot of times I'll work with people who say, yeah, I know what my why is. It's because I don't want to get heart disease like my family. And I go into great detail to explain that's great. And of course I respect that, but phrasing it that way and using that as a motivation is probably not enough to get you from here to there. And so I ask a whole series of questions, the journal prompts really, where people can start to answer the questions for themselves. And we really start to flesh out the actual motivating factors, the things that are really going to get them going beyond just that first week or two where you decide, okay, I'm going to do it. And then we peter out. So the whole book sort of walks through that process from building up the motivation, carrying out the steps, how to make the transition, whether you want to go quickly or more slowly. There's sort of a path for each. And it's just what I think is a very approachable and friendly way to make this transition, again, whether you're brand new or have been at it for a while and are just keep getting stuck in that petering out phase. So I'm super, super excited. I have some, I've had, early copies floating around out there, and the reviews are coming back that are just blowing me away, and people talking about the difference it's making, and people who have been reading all the other wonderful books out there. And there's someone who just wrote today that I've read all those other books. I've been plant-based for a while. I'm already on page 20, and this is changing my life. I can see what's different about this, and I'm so excited to keep going. So I'm so proud to get it out into the market at this point.
I'm so excited. This is it's an amazing book. And I love that it's about why, because at the end of the day, like as you said, motivation doesn't last long, especially the external. And we always kind of get motivated externally, and we're like, oh my God, I wanted something shining, something new, I'm going to go for it. And then after some time, it's just gone, especially if you're doing it by yourself, without a coach, without a group of people.
Right.
That I always encourage my clients to go find a group, like create a group.
Definitely.
I have a group, like in all of that. But the internal motivation, this is like the why that makes you cry, something that really, you want to go really deep, and some people can't really go there without help, without like those questions or someone like a coach to go with you there. And sometimes we are like, I know for myself, I couldn't let myself go in there because it's painful.
Yes, you're exactly right. Mm-hmm.
It really hurts to go there and to see actually why you're doing it. And it might be for reasons like a vanity reasons. And you were always thinking like, oh, I want to be healthy. But deep down inside, you want to look at this mirror and feel sexy. And that's what you need and why you want to need it. Do you want to have sex with your husband? Do you want to find a partner? What is it like? What is it really deep down? And that's why I love this approach of like continual why, working on your why, because this is something that people like, approach it as a diet, which is wrong, but still like they go on and off. And to get back on, sometimes the coach is not even enough, because you're so like, I don't want to do anything. But if this why is so strong that when you close your eyes and you see what it is, why you're doing it, you're going to go back just by you being like in this why moment. So I think it's brilliant. It's absolutely amazing. So I would recommend your book to anyone and everyone, guys. So is your book is only for people who are beginning this journey, or is it for anyone?
It's for anyone. It really is for anyone, because there's, I think, I mentioned it seemed to be easier for me than for other people. And that's really what I'm trying to get at. And I've worked with I've been blessed to work with a lot of people. I have someone who had been plant-based, raw vegan. She has more certifications than I do. And over that, she was, in that based world for almost 20 years. And then she just joined my program because she was always looking to learn, always looking to grow. And she's found it life-changing. And that gives me so much hope, because if somebody like that can find what I'm doing life-changing, then I just know like what it does for everybody else at any step in the journey, So yeah, so it really is, for everybody. And in my Facebook group, there's people from, all walks and all different, parts of the journey. So it's open for everyone. And, it's funny, I call it Baby Got Back in Her Pants. And every once in a while, I'll have men ask, like, is it okay for me to read it too? And yes, of course, it's, it's written that way because it's in my voice, and it's in my, authentic voice to share. And most of the people that I work with tend to be women. And but of course, the recommendations that I make here apply to men too. We have, largely the same biology, and it really is open to everyone. That's
Awesome.
That's the only key feature, right? Anyone that is, looking for some change and willing to take some steps to move towards it.
Yeah, well, then, there's so many books, like a plant-based books out there. What makes your book special? What's so special about your book?
I think it's very succinct, right? So we live in a society that is distracted, like you said, the shiny new object, right? We get so distracted. Our attention spans are very short. And there is already a wealth of information on plant-based stuff, from a million different sources, and it's all wonderful. And that's how I got my start. So, but what I tried to do is just what I wish I had when I started is someone to just say, what, look, like there's a million things out there, but let me just tell you the stuff you need to know, and then you can see changes. You can do it for yourself. And here's how you get from hearing about it to doing it in such a short time. The book is intended to be a 30-day program, right? So you can read faster, you can read slower, but it's intended to read a chapter, take some time, do the journal prompts, do the assignments, and see the changes, right? And by the end of a month, you'll be living it, and you'll be doing it and enjoying it and seeing the benefits of it. And that, to me, makes it really different, because it's not just about the science. It's not just a cookbook. It really combines those two things, plus a self-help angle and the motivation angle and the cheerleader that's behind you, nudging you along. So it's a lot of different, it's kind of coming at the problem from a lot of different angles, which is what I think it takes to really solve it and see long-term success. So all of that in about 200 pages or less. And I think the last 40 pages are all recipes. So it's a very power-packed, easy to read book that will get people right into action without wasting any time.
Amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it. Where and when people can get it?
Yeah, so it'll be on Amazon. In the future, it will be in other retailers as well, but Amazon will be the first. Ebook, paperback, and audiobook. So again, whatever's easiest for people, there's options. All of them will be out by the end of November, and they'll be trickling out just as soon as they're available. So soon, we're right at the cusp. But yeah, if you just go to Amazon, search for Baby Got Back in Her Pants, or my name, Christin Bummer, you'll be able to find it either way. And
people can pre-order it, right?
Yeah, so we have I have an alert list, actually, because I don't have a set date for publication yet. That would be the best way to make sure you hit it at the very beginning, and it'll be on discount in the very beginning as well. So to find out about that, or to get on that list, you just go to theforeverdieet.org/book alert list, and that's all hyphenated. So book-alert-list.
Awesome. And Christin, how people can find you if they want to work with you, or they want to join the group or any kind of program that you're offering? How can people find you?
Probably the best way is the Facebook group, which is Baby Got Back in Her Pants.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm so excited for your book. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time and
Yeah,
knowledge and willingness to share all of your wisdom.
of course, of course. Anything I can do to help, I'm happy to do it. And I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you. Bye.